Okay, so I got the cylinder head back from the machine shop here, and they went ahead and checked everything out, and they couldn't find anything wrong with it except for the number 3 exhaust valve being burnt. So they put in a new exhaust valve, did a full valve job on it, so they ground all the seats and all the valves and made sure everything's sealing right, and resurfaced the head, so it's all ready to go back in now. You know, there's a couple things we gotta do before we can go ahead and put it back in. I got the engine here. You see the old head gasket still on it. That's gotta come off. But first we're gonna have to clean out all these holes and make sure the surface is all ready before we put the head back on. Okay, so you have the cylinder head sitting here on the block with the new head gasket, and I'm getting ready to install some head bolts. I got all new head bolts here. Now, since these are torque to yield head bolts, you want to replace them anytime they're removed. Now, what's important with torque to yield head bolts is that the threads be perfectly clean and that there's no lubricant or sealant or anything like that on the head bolts. Otherwise, it increases the risk that it'll break in the event that they ever have to be removed again. Also, it will affect the torque that they're tightened down to. So what I'm going to do before I put any of these in is just clean them all up really well, make sure there's no oil, lubricant, or anything on them, because they actually came shipped with some coating on them, presumably to keep them from rusting. So we're just going to clean all that off, and then we're just going to put them all in for now, and then we'll torque them. Okay, so I'm ready to torque down the head bolts now, and because these are torque to yield head bolts, we have to torque them down first with a regular torque wrench, and then we'll use a torque angle gauge. Now to start off, we're going to go ahead and torque it in sequence to 22 foot-pounds. Okay, so I got all the bolts torqued down to 22 foot-pounds, and now this is the part where we're actually going to stretch the head bolts. I have a torque angle gauge here, and we're going to torque it an additional 155 degrees. Okay, I've got the head bolts all torqued down now, so I'm going to go ahead and start setting my lifters into place. Just going to give them a light coat of oil before I put them in. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and put in the cam rockers. Now these all have to go back in the same place they came out of. And I'm just going to give them another light coating of oil before I put them in. Okay, now that all the lifters and rockers are in, I'm going to go ahead and place the camshaft in. I've already coated the journals with a coating of motor oil. I'm just going to set this down in here very carefully. I'm not going to worry about the timing right now. I'll set that in a little while. Right now I'm just worried about getting it set down in there as best I can. Of course, some of the valves are going to not want to cooperate with me. I'm going to go ahead and put the caps on now. Now they need to go back on in the same spot they came out of, in the same orientation. So we'll just put those on. Okay, now for the exhaust cam. Okay, so the camshafts are all bolted down and we're getting ready to install the timing chain sprocket and the exhaust cam actuator. Now GM has a special tool for this. It goes on the back of these camshafts and holds the camshafts straight. I don't have that tool, so I'm making do with this setup. These are actually on a set of hexes that are cast into the camshaft specifically for turning and holding it. So this should work just fine. So now a lot of people have actually reused bolts for this, but they're actually torque to yield bolts, so you should replace them. So I've got brand new bolts from the dealership to go in here because that's the only place I could find them. So I'm going to just go ahead and put this on here and line up the marks with the marks on the timing chain. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and put in the exhaust camshaft actuator. Line up the mark on the timing chain with the camshaft actuator. Okay, so we've run into a bit of a problem. I've been able to keep the timing chain fairly tight, so the timing is still correct, but when we removed the cylinder head we had to unbolt the tensioner shoe, and the tensioner has now come all the way out, and it's a ratcheting type tensioner, so we can't just push it back in. There should be a lever on the side of the retentioner all the way down there, and you have to flip that lever in order to get the tensioner back in. Now GM wants you to remove the whole front cover of this thing, but I'm not tearing it all back apart. So we're going to see if we can get a piece of wire onto that lever and get the tensioner retracted so we can get this all put back together. Okay, so this is a piece of 1/4-inch bar stock, and I've ground the end down to sort of a screwdriver shape. I've stuck it in there. I don't know how well you can see that. Maybe if I get a light on it. But I've stuck it in there to move the cam shoe over a little bit so I can see down there. And I doubt you can see this, but I can see the lever way down in there. So I think we might be able to get to it. Well, unfortunately I don't have video of it, but I ended up getting this piece of coat hanger with just a tiny hook on the end, and I was able to get it onto that lever. And once I was on there, I just took my little homemade really long screwdriver out and used it to push back the timing chain tensioner. Now I've got the baling wire holding it in the retractor position, so now I should be able to get the exhaust cam actuator on. Just set it right in here. Get the timing marks lined up. Okay, and just double check that all the timing marks are lined up. These dark links here line up with marks on the sprockets to tell you that they're all aligned. Everything seems to be ordered, so we'll go ahead and torque down the cam phaser bolt to 18 foot-pounds. Okay, so I kind of had to move the radiator fan shroud so I can get the torque angle gauge in there. So now I can do the final adjustment on the exhaust cam phaser bolt. Okay, now I'm going to torque down the intake camshaft sprocket. Looks like I'm going to be able to fit the torque angle gauge in there this time. Okay, now that everything is all bolted down, I can go ahead and remove all this stuff. You don't need to hold the camshaft still anymore, the timing chain will do that. I can also remove the baling wire that's holding the timing chain now. Okay, now got the baling wire all out, the stuff holding the camshafts is all gone, so now everything's back together the way it's supposed to be. And I've rotated it the way it's supposed to run, or in the direction that it spins when it's running, and that has tightened up the cam chain tensioner again, so the timing chain is all nice and tight, and everything appears to be in proper order. Okay, so we got the valve cover and the exhaust manifold on. That was kind of just a tedious process, so we didn't tape it. And now we're just going to start assembling all the random bits and pieces. Okay, the engine's all back together and everything, so we're going to go ahead and start now, see how it sounds. Okay, so the engine's running now, running nice and smoothly now. When I first started it made some noises that weren't too confidence inspiring, but they went away very quickly. It did have a tap very briefly when I first took it for a drive, but I got on the highway, wound it out a bit, and the tap is gone. An easy explanation for that is that when we had the head off, everything was open, so it was possible for stuff to get down in there. So it's very possible there's bits of gasket material, penetrating fluid that we used a lot, coolant, all sorts of stuff could have gotten in there. So it's going to get an oil change. But the tap is gone, engine's running smoothly, no scary noises or anything, and it's not sputtering at idle, it's not stalling out or anything. In fact, the idle's sitting right where it needs to be, and it's nice and smooth. So, pretty much done here.